In less than 2 weeks, it becomes illegal to buy a new AR-15 in Virginia. Not in California, not in New York, in Virginia. The state where George Washington was born. The state where Thomas Jefferson wrote that all men are created equal. The state where James Madison drafted the Bill of Rights, including the Second Amendment. That state just banned your rifle. And here is the part that should make every gun owner in America stop and pay attention. Virginia is not some outlier. It is not an accident. The people behind this law have already said publicly that Virginia is just the beginning. They have a list, and your state might be on it. By the time this video ends, you will understand exactly what the law says, how it passed, who is fighting it, and whether the same thing is coming for you. Let's get into it. What the law actually says: Virginia Senate Bill 749 was signed into law by Governor Abigail Spanberger earlier this year. It takes effect on July 1, 2026. That is less than 2 weeks from now. Here is what the law bans. Starting July 1st, you cannot buy, sell, or transfer a semi-automatic centerfire rifle in Virginia if it has certain features. Those features include a pistol grip, a folding or telescoping stock, a thumbhole stock, or the ability to accept a detachable magazine. If you are thinking that sounds like an AR-15, you are right. The AR-15 is the most popular rifle in America. There are an estimated 20 million of them in civilian hands across the country. Under this law, you cannot buy a new one in Virginia starting July 1st. Magazines that hold more than 15 rounds are also banned from sale or transfer. Since the standard magazine for most popular rifles holds 30 rounds, this affects millions of gun owners directly. Now here is the important part that a lot of news coverage gets wrong. If you already own one of these rifles, you can keep it. The law does not confiscate anything. What it does is freeze the market. After July 1st, no gun store in Virginia can sell you one. No private seller can legally transfer one to you. And when you die, you cannot pass it down to your son or daughter if they live in Virginia. It does not ban the gun you have. It bans the gun you were going to buy. To understand how Virginia got here, you need to go back to November 2025. Virginia held its gubernatorial election. Democrat Abigail Spanberger won. She had been very clear during her campaign about what she wanted to do on guns. The voters of Virginia knew exactly what they were voting for. With a Democrat in the governor's mansion and Democrats already controlling the state legislature, the path was wide open. In the first few months of 2026, Virginia's General Assembly passed more than 15 pieces of gun legislation in a single session. SB 749 passed the state Senate 21-19. Every single Democrat voted yes. Every single Republican voted no. Not one person crossed party lines. That vote tells you everything you need to know about how this law passed and who is responsible for it. It was not a compromise. It was not bipartisan. It was a straight partisan decision made possible by one election. And that is the most important lesson of this entire story. One election changed the gun laws for 5 million Virginia gun owners. Remember that. Here is something you probably have not heard much about. 58 Virginia counties and cities have announced they will not enforce this law. 58. That is a significant number. These are mostly rural counties in western and southern Virginia where gun ownership is part of the culture and the community. Sheriffs and prosecutors in these areas are elected by the same people who own these rifles. They are not going to arrest their neighbors for buying a gun that was legal yesterday. The Pulaski County Commonwealth's attorney said it directly. He will not criminalize on July 1st what was perfectly legal on June 30th. What this creates is a two-Virginia situation. In Northern Virginia and the Richmond suburbs, where the political power that elected Spanberger is concentrated, the law will likely be enforced. In rural Virginia, it may effectively not exist. That kind of split enforcement cannot last forever. Eventually, the courts, future elections, or federal intervention will force a resolution. But for now, where you live in Virginia determines whether this law affects you. The legal fight. Gun rights organizations filed lawsuits immediately after the law was signed. The NRA, Gun Owners of America, and the Virginia Citizens Defense League are all involved in legal challenges. The core argument is simple. In 2008, the Supreme Court ruled in a case called Heller that the Second Amendment protects the right of Americans to own firearms that are in common use for lawful purposes. The AR-15 is the most popular rifle in America. 20 million of them are in civilian hands. By any reasonable definition, that is a firearm in common use. If the government cannot ban a handgun that is in common use, which is what Heller said, how can it ban a rifle that is in common use? That is the question the courts will have to answer. But here is the reality. Legal challenges take time. Years, sometimes. The Virginia law takes effect in less than 2 weeks. Even if a court eventually strikes it down, it could be in effect for a long time before that happens. In the meantime, Virginia gun stores are seeing a surge in sales. People are buying the rifles that will be banned before the deadline hits. The law designed to reduce the number of these firearms in Virginia has, at least in the short term, dramatically increased how many were sold there. That is the same pattern that has played out every single time one of these laws has passed anywhere in the country. Is your state next? This is the question that matters most, and the honest answer is, it depends on where you live and who wins the next election in your state. Virginia is the 9th state to pass some form of assault weapons ban. California was first, decades ago. Illinois, New York, Massachusetts, Connecticut, New Jersey, Hawaii, and Maryland all have versions of similar laws. Now Virginia. The organizations funding these campaigns are not hiding their strategy. They have said publicly that they are running a state-by-state approach. Federal legislation is hard to pass. State legislatures are easier to flip, so they focus their money and their organizing on state elections in states that are close to tipping. After Virginia, the states they are watching most closely include Michigan, Minnesota, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. All of these states have had recent elections decided by thin margins. All of them have active gun control organizations backed by significant funding. If you live in one of those states, the Virginia story is not someone else's problem. It is a preview of what is being planned for you. The flip side is also true. Gun rights organizations are watching these same states. The NRA, Gun Owners of America, and dozens of state-level groups are spending money and organizing in exactly the same places. The outcome will be decided by who turns out to vote. That brings us back to the lesson from Virginia. One election, that is all it took. One governor's race flipped, and 5 million gun owners lost the right to buy a new rifle. What you can do right now, if you are in Virginia and you want an AR-15 or a standard capacity magazine, you have less than 2 weeks. After July 1st, that option is gone from licensed dealers in the state. If you are in another state, the most important thing you can do is pay attention to your state legislature and your governor's race. Find out where your candidates stand. Vote accordingly. What happened in Virginia did not happen because of a court decision or a federal law. It happened because of an election. The legal challenges to this law will play out over months or years. The political battle will play out election by election, and the Second Amendment rights of millions of Americans will be determined by the results. That is where we are. Not in a moment of settled law, in the middle of a fight that is happening right now, in state capitals across the country, and that is not close to being over. If this video helped you understand what is happening in Virginia and why it matters for the rest of the country, drop a comment below and tell me what state you are watching. Is your state next? I want to know. Hit like if this was useful, subscribe and ring the bell so you do not miss our coverage of the Supreme Court's Hawaii gun ruling. That decision is coming any day now, and it could be even bigger than what we covered today. See you in the next one.